The race for Attorney General. Earlier this week, we spoke with the Democrats' nominee, former Boston City Councilor Andrea Campbell. And today, I'm joined by the Republican candidate, Jim McMahon, a trial attorney and former military police officer. He ran for AG as well in 2018. Jim McMahon, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you, Jim. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. We just did a segment with a senator from the Cape and Islands and a reporter from a sister station about the migrants that were shipped to Martha's Vineyard, apparently based on their testimony upon misrepresentations that were told to them. What's your reaction to what's happening on the Vineyard?
I'll tell you, my heart goes out to everybody involved, to the migrants. They didn't select to be there. They probably didn't even know they were going there. I don't like how this is all playing out. Jim, all I can tell you, it seems to be the outflow from a failed policy on the south border by the federal government. Now, granted, these governments, the governors of these states in particular in Texas, are sending them all over the country. I've seen it in D.C., New York, and of course now here in Martha's Vineyard. I guess they're trying to send a message to the rest of the country with respect to the failed policies on the border.
Do you support what Governor DeSantis did? He's proudly claiming credit for this. Do you support what he's doing?
I don't, because it's adversely affecting Massachusetts.
Okay. I went to your website, and you have scores of representations of what you would do while you're running, promises of what you do when you're Attorney General. I randomly picked a handful of them. I'm going to put them up, and then you'll explain to us a little bit of what you mean. The first one is, I will keep you safe from renegade mobs who destroy our cities. What renegade mobs are destroying our cities in Massachusetts?
Jim, as you recall, in the spring of 2020, following the death of George Floyd, there was mob violence all over the country in several major cities, Boston being one of them. And it was clear when I was watching the program, when I was watching the news footage of the mobs and the violence that was happening, how our police officers were being injured, how our police cruisers were being set on fire. And watching that, initially, before that had happened, I was almost like probably most Americans at the death of George Floyd. The optics were terrible as to how he died.
But then what?
Well, and then all of a sudden, here we are in Massachusetts. There's been no deaths in police custody in Massachusetts in over a generation, or in New England for that matter.
But if I may, I didn't see, I read every single one of your promises. I didn't read you say, and I'm going to make sure that I keep you safe from police officers who were videoed at those demonstrations driving a car into a protester and bragging about it. Did that trouble you?
It does, Jim, tremendously.
Why didn't you say it?
Well, Jim, I think it goes without saying that anybody who breaks the law, including road police officers, will suffer the same penalty and the same prosecution as anyone else.
Okay, let me go to the next one, because I have a bunch of them. I will not push a political agenda by filing meritless government lawsuits. I assume that's shorthand for all the lawsuits that Maura Healey filed against Trump. Is that it?
Well, against the federal government? Yes, it is, Jim. I think there was a whole lot of wasted effort there. Her batting average was very low.
Excuse me, what percentage of those lawsuits did she win? Do you know?
She didn't win any.
She won 77, Jay, she won 77% of her lawsuits against Donald Trump.
Jim, not the ones she initiated, the ones that she joined in.
Let's go to another. I'll stand with parents against school committees who insist on teaching our children critical race theory. Which districts in Massachusetts are teaching critical race theory?
Jim, what we've discovered is they won't call it that. They haven't called it that, well, they stopped calling it. They're calling it other things. Now, we're finding that parents, I'm getting calls all the time. We're finding that parents are discovering either from their children or when they're making some requests to the schools themselves, they are finding it in the curriculum, but under different names.
What is critical race? But you use the term critical race theory. What is critical race theory that you're objecting to? What is it?
Jim, it's the teaching that there's been, it's the teaching that one race has been victimized by another race. In essence, it goes back to, it goes all the way back to the beginning of this nation, and it's an attempt to rewrite history.
Well, actually, it's not that. I assume you know it's that some problems in this country are not the result of individual bias and racism, but systemic racism. And can you identify any of those districts that are teaching it by some other name?
Well, Jim,
Can you?
I can't give you right here in this interview the specific districts, but I am hearing it from parents who are sending me emails, which I've been calling them back. And so there's an overwhelming amount of them, Jim.
Okay. Let me go to the fourth one. Let me go to one more if I can, Jay McMahon. Some DAs have accepted whole categories of crimes that they will not prosecute. My office will step up and prosecute those crimes. There, I'm sure you're talking in particular about the 15, what she called minor offenses, Rachel Rollins said she'd not prosecute, correct?
That's right.
Well, the people of, do you know how...
And also, we had an issue with that in Berkshire County as well.
Right, but you know that 80% of the people in Suffolk County, people who you want to represent as Attorney General, 80% of them voted for Rachel Rollins, knowing exactly what she stood for. So why do you suggest that you know better than them? And also, as I'm sure you know, Jay, there was a report that was issued that showed that her policies reduced the recidivism rate in Suffolk County. Does that matter to you?
Jim, I'll tell you what about statistics that you need to know. That if the police are told the crimes are not going to be prosecuted, or in essence, the cases are dead on arrival, they don't get involved in the statistics. So if you're told not to arrest anyone for shoplifting or for pickpocketing or all the other lists of crimes, they're not being reported. Of course, it shows a
By the way, she has no power to say don't arrest. She said she won't prosecute. There'll be diversionary programs, those sort of things. You know that.
As you know, Jim, if you're going to discourage the police officers and say we're not going to prosecute, what's the point of arresting?
Jay McMahon, you, I know from doing a debate with you and Maura Healey in 2018, you're pro-life. If you're the Attorney General and a lawsuit was filed, for example, challenging the protection of reproductive rights of women in the state that Governor Baker, a Republican, signed in July, would you defend the statute as the state's lawyer, or would you not?
Jim, I'm required to, and I would.
You're actually not required to. I'm sure you know there have been many attorneys general who've recused themselves from individual cases and have appointed other, or had the court appointed other people to represent the state when they felt in good conscience they could not. You know that, right?
Sure. Scott Harshberger has done that when he was the AG, when it came to gay marriage. And of course,
so would you do that? Would you still represent?
I'm not going to recuse myself in a situation that is part of the duties of the Attorney General's office to uphold the laws of the Commonwealth.
You know, I'm embarrassed to say I don't remember from our discussion in 2018. Are you, a number of your colleagues, Republican colleagues running for statewide office, are proud supporters of Donald Trump? Are you?
I supported Trump, and I didn't necessarily support him as a person. I'm not looking at that, but I did support his policies.
Did you vote for him in both elections?
I did vote for him,
Would you vote for him in 2024 if he were to run again?
I don't know. I'd have to see who else was running. Jim, there's other candidates that may.
No, I meant if he was the Republican nominee. I'm sorry, Jay. Would you support him then?
Yes, I would, Jim.
You know, the thing that surprises me a bit about that, Jay, is I've read a lot about you, and I know you a little bit. You're a very strong supporter of law enforcement. You know as well as I that a handful of police officers lost their lives as a result of what happened on January 6th and the days after. And I think the conventional wisdom is January 6th happened because of the outgoing president of the United States. How do you reconcile voting for a man who allowed that to happen to people trying to protect our country and our capital?
Jim, as running for Attorney General, there's a lot of things I could talk about how I personally feel. But when I look at the evidence and I see news footage of Trump telling people not to go, not to engage in violence, think if you're looking at it by straight facts, I know one police officer died. It wasn't he was at the scene, but it was not as a result of that. I know one of the people who broke into the Capitol building was shot by a Capitol
other police officers did die in the follow-up.
Well,
As you know, there were suicides and things. We only have a minute left, if I may. You probably,
okay.
I know you know, that I have asked Andrea Campbell on both my radio show and here if she would debate you. Her response was 3 times, "We'll see." Subsequent to that, you put out a press release saying you'd like 7 debates, including one here, and we thank you for putting us on your list. Have you been in touch with the Campbell campaign to see if... Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff. I didn't mean to cut you off. First of all, I want to say that GBH has been very fair, tough in debates, tough with questions, but that's the whole point of a debate. You ask the questions, we have to give you the answers.
I only have a few seconds. Have you reached out to the Campbell campaign to see if she will debate you?
Our campaign has, yes.
And?
We'll see, is the response we're getting.
Well, I should say to you, Jay, as you know, we invite you formally. We invited Andrea Campbell. We look forward to debate between the 2 nominees. We thank you for your time tonight, and we hope that debate happens soon.
I hope it happens soon on your show. Thank you, Jim.
Jay, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Jay McMahon.
All right.